Thank you, Mr. Lemon. Mr. Ridgway, you may call your first witness.
David Kinard. At this time, I would move to admit into evidence states AL and AM.
No objection.
Do you have your mic on?
I'm sorry?
This will be admitted without objection as State's Exhibit Number 1 for purposes of the penalty phase. Do you have your mic on? Okay. All right, this is a composite exhibit consisting of 3 pages.
One of them is, Your Honor, one is marked separately, the tags on
Oh,
the
is it?
back.
I'm sorry. So A is 1, AL is 1 page, AM is 2 pages. So it's composite exhibit number 2, penalty phase, and single exhibit number 1, penalty phase for State. You may inquire.
So would you state your name and spell your last name for the court reporter?
My name is David Kinard, Kinard.
And how are you employed, sir?
I'm a United States probation officer employed by the Middle District of Florida assigned to the Orlando Division.
And would you explain briefly the function of the United States Probation Office?
The United States Probation Office supervises and oversees individuals that are placed on probation by the United States District Court or those that are placed on supervised release after they serve a term of imprisonment within the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
And what is your position there?
I'm a supervisory United States probation officer.
And in basic terms, what are your duties as a supervisory probation officer?
I oversee the daily functions of the probation office as part of a management team. Then I also supervise a unit of probation officers and support staff.
When someone is placed on probation with your office, are they required to report to your office?
Yes, on occasion.
And how often and how do they report?
Individuals can report in person if they're required, and we also conduct field work outside of the office, but individuals may also be required to submit monthly supervision reports, and those reports may be submitted electronically.
And if they're submitted electronically, how is it you know the report is actually coming from the probationer?
Persons under supervision maintain a password that they use to log into the electronic system, but they also use that password to electronically sign when they submit the report.
And when they report in this manner, is there a document created by your department, by your office, documenting that report?
Yes.
And are those prepared and kept in the ordinary course of your business?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Let me show you what has been marked State's Exhibit 1 for this phase of the trial. Ask you to examine that and ask, are you familiar with the case that document concerns?
Yes.
And is that a case that your office has connection with?
Yes.
No objection.
Sir, who is the individual that document you hold relates to?
Markeith Loyd.
Let me show you what has been marked as State's AN for identification and ask if you recognize that.
Yes, I do.
And what is that?
This is an electronic monthly supervision report. It was submitted on December 7th, 2016, but for the preceding month of November 2016.
And whose report is that?
Markeith Loyd.
And is that in connection with the case that the document you examined earlier?
Yes.
And are the charges on that document felony charges?
Yes.
Was Markeith Loyd under active supervision of your office on December the 13th, 2016?
Yes.
And do you know when he was scheduled to complete that supervision?
His supervision commenced July 9th, 2014, and was due to term on July 8th of 2019.
Your Honor, I move to admit into evidence State's Exhibit AN.
Any objection?
No.
All right, this will be received without objection as State's Exhibit Number 3 for purposes of the penalty phase.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Cross.
Yes. Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You weren't actually his officer, is that correct?
No, sir, I was not.
And you are here in reference to a subpoena from the state, but you've provided us a letter, or at least your supervisor provided us a letter dated August 2nd, 2019, that you're familiar with?
Yes, sir. Deputy Chief DeCarlos Shepard submitted that letter.
Okay. So Mr. Loyd was sentenced on June 23rd, 1999, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And on June 2nd, 2008, he received a reduction of 30 months pursuant to the Amendment 706, which is the crack retroactivity amendment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so what that is when he was arrested and charged and sentenced originally, they were giving enhancements on crack cocaine as opposed to powder. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And so at some point, the courts decided that that was problematic. Is that right?
So to speak, yes, sir.
Okay. And that they actually reduced the charges or the sentence on those kind of cases because of that problem where they were focusing on people who sold crack as opposed to powder.
Yes, on those type of cases.
Okay. Now, he was released on July 9, 2014. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And he did supervised release,
Yes, sir.
had to live in a halfway house.
Typically, their halfway house stay is prior to being released to supervision, so they do that as part of their imprisonment sentence, and then they're released.
Okay, so before July 9th, he was released and did time in a halfway house.
I do not have those records, sir.
Okay. But that's typically the way it is,
Yes, sir.
correct? All right. And so he would have been living in the community and working and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so during the period of time that he was under supervision, he maintained multiple forms of employment. Is that correct?
From what I understand, yes, in reference to the letter.
Okay. He worked at Texas Fried Chicken in Orlando from April 2015 until December 2016 as a delivery driver. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And during his time under his supervision, he held various part-time jobs for short periods of time. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And during that time, the two things that Mr. Loyd was disciplined for, although the probation was never revoked, was that he tested positive twice for marijuana. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he had a traffic incident which he didn't report to you guys.
Yes, he failed to report contact with law enforcement.
Okay. And those are the only problems he had in the 2+ years that he was out.
I was not the supervising officer, but according to the letter that was offered,
Okay.
Yes,
and
sir.
you rely on that letter because it's authored by your deputy chief probation officer. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. Those are the only questions I have, Judge.
Redirect.
No, ma'am.
May this witness be excused. All right, thank you, sir. You are free to go. Call your next witness.
State called Howard Kuehn.
I do.
You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Have a seat, sir.
That's the guy.
Morning.
Good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Yes, my name is Howard Kuehn. It's spelled Kuehn. I am the senior latent fingerprint examiner with the Orlando Police Department.
Can you describe for the jury your training and experience that allowed you to be a latent fingerprint examiner?
Well, my initial fingerprint training was with the Federal Bureau of Investigation as a 10-print examiner, or inked fingerprints. I moved into latent fingerprints after leaving the crime scene unit at Orlando Police Department. For the last 15 years, I've been doing latent prints. I have taken courses through FDLE in basic and advanced latent fingerprint comparisons, as well as palm print comparisons, footprint comparisons, and the like. And in addition, I've had 600 additional hours of training in that field as well.
What is a latent fingerprint?
Okay, a latent fingerprint is a print that is not always seen with the naked eye, that sometimes will be left on an item or a car or anything along those lines, and it would need to be processed through chemical means in order to bring that print to be visible.
And how do you compare a latent fingerprint that you may get from a crime scene with known fingerprints from a person?
Well, the first thing you would do is look and determine pattern type. There's three main types of patterns when you're looking at fingerprints. There's loops, whorls, and arches. So if you can see the classification or the class pattern, you can then look at your known prints and easily either eliminate or realize you have to go a further step when doing the comparisons. Because in other words, if the latent print you're looking at is a whorl, but the known print you're looking at contains all loops, you know it does not belong to that person. So, but if there is a similar class pattern, then you would look at individual characteristics.
You use the term loop and whorl. Are those just names for individual characteristics within a fingerprint?
Those are the class characteristics. A whorl would be a circular type pattern. A loop could be going either to the left or the right, where the ridges would flow in on one side of the pattern, make a loop, and go back out on the same side it came in on. And an arch is basically a fingerprint pattern where the ridges will flow in on one side, come up in a little hump, and then flow out the other side of the fingerprint pattern.
Are fingerprints unique to individuals?
They are.
Have you provided opinion testimony in the area of fingerprint analysis and comparison in a court of law?
I have.
Can you estimate about how many times?
In excess of 100 times.
In your experience, when a person is convicted of a felony in state court, especially here in Orange County, are they fingerprinted?
Yes, they are.
And did you also obtain fingerprints from somebody named Markeith Loyd?
I did.
Have you seen Mr. Loyd here in court today?
Yes, I do.
Can you please point him out and tell me what he's wearing?
He's wearing the black shirt and the light-colored tie.
Right.
We'll speak just up a little bit. May I approach?
You may.
Showing states exhibit AJ for identification. These fingerprints represent the fingerprints you took from Mr. Loyd?
They do.
When did you take them?
I took those on August 9th of 2018.
Are they in substantially the same condition as when you collected them?
They are.
This time the state would move AI into evidence, as I believe states 4.
This will be received without objection as State's Exhibit Number 4 for penalty phase purposes.
That's AJ, Your Honor. I was
H.A.?
AJ.
A.J., okay.
Did you also receive a certified copy of conviction in Orange County on case 98 CF 82?
I did.
This time the state would move in AK into evidence as states 5, I believe.
No. This will be received without objection as State's Exhibit Number 5 for penalty phase purposes.
Are there fingerprints associated with that conviction, 98 CF 82, for battery on a law enforcement officer?
There are.
Compare the fingerprints that you rolled from the defendant to the fingerprints that appear on the last page of that conviction.
I did.
What was your conclusion?
Based on my training and experience, I determined that they were indeed the same person.
Thank Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, thank you, sir. You are free to go.
Thank you, ma'am.
Call your next witness.
State call Todd.
Yes, ma'am.
Sure.
Have a seat.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a quick legal matter I need to talk about with the lawyer. So I'm going to send you back into the jury room. Get yourselves a cup of coffee. You'll be right back. Good morning, sir. Tell me your name again. I'm sorry.
Todd Herb,
Herb.
H-E-R-B, yes, ma'am.
Are you still employed in law enforcement?
No, ma'am.
All right. Your testimony today is about the incident that occurred. You were the officer that Mr. Loyd was convicted of battering. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Your testimony needs to be limited to facts and only facts, not your opinion, not your emotions that day. None of that is relevant. All right. Penalty phases are a little different for witnesses, so we're instructing you so that there's no problems in front of the jury. So, for example, if you're asked, did Mr. Loyd strike you, the answer is yes, he did, not yes, he did, and it really hurt. You understand the difference between facts
Yes, ma'am.
and everything else?
Of course.
Be careful in what you're saying. Stick to the answers that, or to the questions that you're being asked. And very specifically, apparently there was a call signal that went out from you. You cannot say it was the first time that you did that, all right?
Okay.
Because it's not relevant to anything.
Okay.
Do you have any questions about your testimony?
No, ma'am.
Do you need a minute to speak to the state before you testify, just to clarify, and the defense? Are you guys good?
Don't mention that this was the first time you called for emergency help, the reason behind that, or that this was a exceptional experience. Just don't ask the facts, please answer the facts, and all.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right, everybody good? All right, let's bring the jury back in, unless they need a break. Thanks. Okay, be at ease till they're done. If anybody else needs to take a break, now's a good time to do it. State recognized present to the jury. Defense? Yes. All right, welcome back, folks. Mr. Buxman, you may resume.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Yes, sir. My name is Todd Herb, last name spelling H-E-R-B.
Where do you work now?
I work at a company called Central Square Technologies,
Let me direct your attention back to 1998. Where did you work then?
the Orlando Police Department.
And as of the time of 1998, how long had you been working for Orlando PD?
I started in Orlando in December of 1996.
Where did you work before that?
I worked at the Palm Bay Police Department in Brevard County.
Let me direct your attention back to January 3rd of 1998, at just before 2 o'clock in the afternoon. What were your duties then?
I was a patrol officer,
And what area did you patrol?
the area of Paramore.
Was that an area you were assigned to, or did you just choose that area?
I was assigned to that area.
Did you come in contact with a blue Plymouth Acclaim around that time in that area?
Yes, I did.
And what drew your attention to it?
I was traveling on Conley Street at approximately 35 miles an hour, and I seen the blue Acclaim pulling away from me, and also could see that it did not have a tag on it.
Was it traveling the same direction as you?
Yes,
And you said it had no tag on it?
correct.
What kind of car were you driving?
I was driving a marked Orlando police vehicle.
You say marked. Is it obvious to anybody that it's a patrol car?
Correct.
How were you dressed?
I was dressed in my blue Orlando police uniform.
Would it be obvious to anyone that you were a law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir.
Describe how the vehicle was pulling away from you. Was it gradual? Was it at a high speed?
I was at a high rate of speed pulling away from me.
Once you saw that the car was it speeding?
Yes, sir.
Once you saw it was speeding and that it had no tag, what did you do?
I pulled behind the vehicle to initiate a traffic stop.
And what happened?
The driver had pulled over and exited his vehicle.
Did you activate your lights before or after the car had pulled over and stopped?
Probably about the same time or immediately after it had stopped. I turned my overhead lights on and I got out of my vehicle.
And did you maintain sight of the vehicle from the point where you saw it to the point where it pulled over?
Yes.
Once the car stopped, what did the driver do?
He got out of the driver's side door, out of the driver's side seat.
Did he wait there, or what happened?
He began to walk away.
Did you actually see the driver get out of the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
Was anybody else in the car with the driver?
No.
Was anybody else in the immediate area?
No.
Who did you determine was driving the car during the course of the investigation?
Markeith Loyd.
What did you do when Mr. Loyd got out of the driver's seat and started to walk away?
I told him I needed to see his driver's license.
How did he respond?
He said he wasn't driving.
What did you say to that?
I said, I saw you driving, I need to see your driver's license.
How did he respond to the second request?
I wasn't driving, and he kept walking away.
Based on your observations that he was speeding and that there wasn't a tag on the car, what were you planning on writing him any tickets, or what was your plan?
My plan was to obtain his driver's license or identification, see if he had a valid driver's license, conduct a traffic stop, and either write him a ticket or issue him a verbal warning if he had a valid license.
Once he refused your request to provide you his license twice, what did you do?
And as he continued to step away, I decided at that point I was going to arrest him for resisting without violence.
And what did you do?
I grabbed his right wrist. I told him he was under arrest and told him to put his hands behind his back.
And when you grabbed his right wrist, what did he do?
He said, my wrist hurts. He began to pull away from me.
And how'd you respond?
I attempted again to get his right hand behind his back in order to handcuff him, and he punched me in the face.
When he said his wrist hurt, did he tell you anything about why or what was wrong?
No.
Explain to the jury how he punched you in the face.
I was holding on to his right wrist, again, trying to get his hands behind his back, and he had, with his left hand, he punched me in the right side of my face.
After he punched you in the face, were you able to stay a hold of him?
No, sir.
What happened?
It caused me to break away, and he started swinging his arms and hitting me
Where?
in the face and chest area.
Can you estimate about how many times he hit you in the face and chest area?
It was approximately 7 to 10 times.
In the process of hitting you, did anything happen to any of your equipment?
Yes, sir. My shoulder mic got ripped off of my shirt.
What happened then?
He took off running, and I chased him.
Were you able to, during the chase, were you able to call for backup?
Eventually, my shoulder mic, which you have a pack set on your radio, and then the shoulder mic up here was flying around as I was chasing him, and I was finally able to kind of control that and grab it and then call for backup.
Did you eventually catch up with him?
Yes.
And what happened when you caught up with him?
As we got, it was kind of a big circle, as we got to behind a house, he turned and squared up and faced me again, and I extended my ASP baton.
Did you give him any orders or commands?
I told him to get on the ground.
Did he?
No.
What did you do when you pulled out your asp or your baton?
I attempted to hit him across the side of the leg in order to get him to comply.
And what happened when you swung at him?
I barely hit him, if anything, and my ASP baton went flying out of my hand.
What did Mr. Loyd do then?
He ran again.
I'm sorry?
He ran again.
What'd you do?
I chased him again.
Did you eventually catch up with him again?
When he got to back to the same car that he had stepped out of, he was trying to get back in the car, and that's when I caught back up to him again.
And once you reached the car, what did you do?
I pulled out my pepper spray and tried to spray him in the face in order to arrest him.
What effect did that have on him?
A little, not much, I'd say.
Were you giving him any commands at this point?
The entire time, yes, sir. You're under arrest, get down on the ground.
After you pepper sprayed him, what happened?
He took off running again.
Which direction?
The same direction. It was basically one big circle at that point. And as he was running away again, I was finally able to kind of grab him from behind.
And once you were able to grab him from behind, what happened?
He started flailing his elbows and hitting me again.
Where?
In the chest area.
At some point, were you able to gain control over him?
We kind of fell down to the ground together, and I fell on top of him.
And what did you do when you were on top of him?
I just laid there.
Shortly thereafter, did your backup arrive?
Yes, sir.
And what happened when your backup arrived?
I rolled off of him, and they handcuffed him.
During this encounter with Mr. Loyd, did you see any casts or injuries or splints or anything like that on his hands?
No.
At some point later on, did you learn that his hand had been previously injured?
That's what he had said, but
Okay. Thank you, sir. No questions.
thank you.
Cross?
So you were initiating a traffic stop, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
A traffic stop is an infraction, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Not even a crime, right?
Correct.
As a police officer, you're trained to use traffic stops to initiate crime investigation, aren't you?
Could you be more specific, sir, on that?
You use those as an excuse to stop black people.
That's not true, sir.
As a matter of fact, that's why you were stopping him. Isn't it true?
No, sir.
And when you got out of your car and confronted him, it was your intent that you were going to arrest him. Is that true?
No, sir.
As a matter of fact, he had committed no crimes up to that point when you approached him. Is that right?
Correct.
As a matter of fact, he denied he was driving the vehicle. Right?
Correct.
So you asked him for his driver's license, right?
Yes, sir.
And when he said he wasn't going to give it to you, you decided you were going to arrest him. Is that right?
After the second time.
You
Yes,
didn't
sir.
say, excuse me, sir, can you give me your name and date of birth so I can run to see if you have a driver's license? Did you do that?
I didn't have a chance to. He was walking away from me.
And you grabbed him.
Yes, sir.
You grabbed him by the wrist.
Correct.
And up to this point, you're claiming you didn't, to this day, you don't even know he had an injury. But that's not true, is it?
Say that again, sir.
To this day, you're claiming that you did not know he had an injury.
At that time?
At any time, because he just asked you. Isn't it true you found out later on?
Later on, he said he had an injury, but I didn't know it at that time.
Later on, when you went to court, before you testified, because you were cross-examined by his lawyer. Is that right? So you knew he had an injury because they introduced proof of that injury. Is that right?
I'm sorry, sir. Your question is confusing.
The trial where Mr. Loyd got 4.5 years in prison because of your testimony.
Okay.
You found out on that day that he did have an injury because they introduced evidence of that. Isn't that right?
Could be, sir. That was a long time ago, but I'm not disputing that.
Why did you tell this prosecutor something different, this jury?
I believe the question was asked when I first approached Mr. Loyd. When I grabbed him, did I know he had an injury at that point when I first contacted him, which I did not.
Well, isn't he true he told you he had an injury?
At that time, yes, sir.
And as a matter of fact, you didn't believe him. Isn't that right?
I don't think I believed him or not believed him at that point. I was just trying to place him under arrest.
Isn't it true that you didn't believe him because black people make excuses like that?
Is that a question, sir?
Yeah, that's a question.
Could you repeat it, please?
Isn't it true that you didn't believe him because black people make excuses like that?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that there was nothing there to show that he was injured?
Say that again, sir? Could you
Isn't it
rephrase that
true-
question?
Isn't it true that there was nothing there to say that he was injured?
Isn't it? That's a double negative. I'm sorry, sir. You're going to have to rephrase that question.
Isn't it true that there was nothing around his hand or anything that would indicate to me that he wasn't lying? Did you say that?
Yeah, sustained. What are we doing here?
Did you not believe him when he said that he had an injury?
I've already answered that question, sir. I didn't not believe him or believe him. I just was trying to place him under arrest.
You gave a statement at that trial. Do you remember that trial?
I remember being in trial, sir, but it was a long time ago, so you'd have
Do
to...
you need to see your transcript to refresh your recollection about what I'm talking about?
I don't even know what your question is, sir.
You were asked the following question, beginning on page 87, lines 23, 22. Question, what did he say or do? Answer, at this point he began to tell me that his wrist hurt or his hand hurt. Question, let me stop the story right there. Until he said that, had you noticed anything about him or did you have any knowledge of any problem that he had? Answer, no, I didn't, nothing. Question, was this news to you? Answer, yes. There wasn't a cast or a bandage or nothing around his hand or anything that would indicate to me that he wasn't lying or whatever the case may be. There was nothing there to say that he was injured. Do you remember making that statement under oath in trial?
I don't remember it, but I certainly don't dispute it, sir.
Would you like to see the transcript?
No, I don't know what your question is, so at this point, no.
So you don't dispute you said that?
No, sir.
As a matter of fact, you had a very secure grip on his hand at the time that you grabbed him. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's what you're trained to do when you grab someone, to have a secure grip. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And as a matter of fact, you squeezed his wrist, and the technique is to try to squeeze him to comply. Isn't that right?
To try to get his hand behind his back. Yes, sir.
That's the method that you were trained to do, correct?
Yes, sir. It's called a wrist lock. That is correct.
And later on, when you continued to chase him, you pulled your asp, which is a baton, out to try to strike him. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
So the first thing when you grab him, that's considered use of force, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Anytime that you use of force, you have people scrutinize your behavior to check to see if you follow policy and procedure. That's part of the protocol at the police department, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
So you have to justify use of force, isn't that right?
Correct.
And anytime you use your baton, you have to justify and scrutinize use of force for your superiors, isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Now, at some point, you claimed and had photographs of your face taken which showed it was red. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you used those photographs, or the prosecutor used those photographs and introduced them at trial. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And part of the reason, by your own testimony, that your face was red was because you maced yourself. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
And you maced him. Isn't that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what the plea offer to Mr. Loyd was before he went to trial?
Let me see the attorneys at the bench, please.
Sustained, Judge?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's a fair statement that all the things you testified, by the time the first police officer arrived at the scene, you were on top of Mr. Loyd. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I have nothing further.
Thank you.
Redirect? No redirect, All right, may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Defense? Okay.
Thank you,
You're
Judge.
free to
Thank
go.
you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. Call your next witness. All right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the state has rested for the presentation of the aggravators. The defense now has their mitigators to put on. Mr. Lenneman, you may proceed. Absolutely. Why don't we take a 10-minute break?